Trayvon Martin's parents, Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin. Evidence is overwhelming. Good morning, I'm Martin, and good morning, I'm Attorney Benjamin Crump, along with Trayvon Martin's parents, Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin, and some other family members of Trayvon. We're here to make a brief statement as we formally begin trial today. A murder trial is a very emotional matter, but Trayvon's parents understand that the jury will have to hear all of the evidence to base their verdict on that evidence. We think that this is a simple case. There are two important facts in this case. Number one, George Zimmerman was a grown man with a gun. And number two, Trayvon Martin was a minor who had no blood on his hands. Literally, no blood on his hands. There was none of George Zimmerman's DNA found on Trayvon Martin's hands or underneath his fingernails. We believe that the evidence is overwhelming to hold George Zimmerman accountable for killing Trayvon Martin. As these former proceedings began, that Tracy and Sabrina over the last year and a half have fought so hard to get to. We understand that now it is time for the jury to do their duty and base the verdict and their decision on the evidence, the instructions of the court, and the law. At this time, Ms. Sabrina Fulton will address you, and then Mr. Tracy Martin.
I'm here today as Trayvon Martin's mother. As I have been every day, I will be attending this court and to try to get justice for my son. I ask that you pray for me and my family, because I don't want any other mother to have to experience what I'm going through now. Thank you.
Good morning. As the court proceedings continue today, we as a family look and cherish and hold on to the memories that Trayvon left us with. As we enter the courtroom today and seeking justice for our son, we hold on to his smile, which strengthens us, and we ask that you all continue to pray for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a sad case, of course. As one of your fellow jurors commented during the jury selection process, a young man lost his life, another is fighting for his. There are no winners here. How profound and how insightful. Sabrina Fulton and Tracy Martin are grieving parents. Without question, they have the right to grieve. They have the right to feel the way they feel. George Zimmerman's parents also are grieving. You see Trayvon Martin's parents, Mr. Martin and Ms. Fulton, here in the courtroom. They're seated right over here. They're likely to be witnesses in the case. You don't see Mr. Zimmerman's parents here, though. They would be seated over here the way the courtroom has been constructed. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that they are on the witness list. They may testify, they may not. As you know from the beginning of this, there's a couple of hundred people on there, and certainly not all of them will testify. But because they might, and because they are not related to the deceased, then they're not allowed in the courtroom now. That's the reason. Not that they aren't here, not that they aren't, in fact, right around the corner in a room wishing they could be. That includes Mr. Zimmerman's wife, Shelley, and other family members. Any witnesses, unless there's a specific exclusion that they may sit in the courtroom, cannot. I think the evidence will show that this is a sad case, that there are no monsters here.
Punks. These assholes, they always get away. Those were the words in that that grown man's mouth as he followed in the dark a 17-year-old boy who he didn't know. And excuse my language, but those were his words, not mine. Fucking punks. These assholes. They always get away. Those were the words in that man's chest when he got out of his car, armed with a fully loaded semi-automatic pistol and 2 flashlights, to follow on foot Tranyvon Benjamin Martin, who was walking home from a 7-Eleven, armed with 23 ounces of Arizona brand fruit juice and a small bag of Skittles candies. Punks. These assholes. They always get away. Those were the words in that defendant's head just moments before he pressed that pistol into Trayvon Martin's chest and pulled the trigger. And then, as the smoke and the smell of that fatal gunshot rose into a rainy Sunday Sanford night, Trayvon Martin, 21 days removed from his 16th year, was face down in wet grass, laboring through his final breaths on this earth. And that defendant, at that same time, was upright, walking around, preparing to tell law enforcement why it was he had just profiled, followed, and murdered an unarmed teenager. Ladies and gentlemen, the truth about the murder of Trayvon Martin is going to come directly from his mouth. From those hate-filled words that he used to describe a perfect stranger, and from the lies that he told to the police to try to justify his actions. If you'll indulge me for the next few minutes, I would like to share with you in a little greater detail the end of Trayvon Martin's young life and the overwhelming evidence of this defendant's guilt. The murder of Trayvon Martin was the product of 2 worlds colliding. In one world, a 17-year-old boy from Miami, Florida, a visitor to this town, who had gone to the store to get something to drink for himself and some candy for a 12-year-old friend. But in the other world, a 28-year-old grown man, somebody who wanted to be a police officer, somebody who had called the police numerous times about crime in his neighborhood, someone who had become the neighborhood watch captain, and someone who believed, most importantly, that it was his right to rid his neighborhood of anyone that he believed didn't belong.
Sometimes you have to laugh to keep from crying. So let me, at considerable risk, let me say, I'd like to tell you a little joke. I know how that may sound a bit weird in this context under these circumstances. But I think you're the perfect audience for it. As long as you if you don't like it or you don't think it's funny or inappropriate, that you don't hold it against Mr. Zimmerman. You can hold it against me if you want, but not Mr. Zimmerman. I have your assurance you won't. Here's how it goes. Knock, knock. Who's there? George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman, who? All right, good. You're on the jury. Nothing? That's funny. After what you folks have been through the last 2 or 3 weeks? Let's get on to, however, the serious business of why we're here.
Our episode today, the Tranyvon Martin murder case, day one. The introductory, our opening statements were given on Monday in Stanford, Florida, in the Tranyvon Martin murder trial. The opening statements are very important because what you're doing there is you're setting up or laying out a blueprint of what you plan to do to prove your case. And the state of Florida, in the case, the state of Florida versus George Zimmerman, they laid it out, and we'll go into some of the testimony, at least the highlights of the first day of the trial. But the two attorneys laid that out, and of course, when everything is over, in other words, when they have taken all the testimony, the closing statements is a summarization of the case. Now, one very important thing to remember, this is a case about evidence, but it's more of a case about what the jury, supposedly in Florida, on the Florida law, 6 individuals decide is the law and who is culpable for the crime. And did a crime take place in this case, second-degree murder on the part of George Zimmerman. And this is what the state is trying to lay out. And a bunch of procedural motions had preceded the actual trial. The jury, of course, is seated there. And they hear the opening statement, and then they hear from some state witnesses in this particular this trial and laying it out. They start out with a young man that was at the condo where Tranyvon Martin was staying with his father and his girlfriend. The young man, I believe, was 12 years old at the time, and basically they were playing PlayStation 3 games that day while Tranyvon was there, and he'd been there before, and watching TV. And then Tranyvon went to the store to get a tonic, as we'd call it, juice, in other words, I think, brand there of Arizona, whatever. And the young man wanted the Skittles, some sweet. So he got those at the store, and they leave the young man behind. The young man is now 15 years old. You'll hear a little from him. And then they go to the clerk at the 7-Eleven. What the prosecution there was putting the appearance of Tranyvon Martin to the court. In other words, what did Tranyvon Martin look like to the clerk? Now, remember, this clerk was there, and it was not a busy time. I think he had the 4 to 11 shift at the particular store, and now he was at a rent a center or something. 20 years old. This is a clerk, and he just, as far as his description, he was an ordinary person. Came in, bought the stuff, and they had the video of Tranyvon Martin, and this fellow was 5'11", he's 5'10", and you could see Tranyvon Martin towered over him. He had his hooded sweatshirt on, and he was digging in his pocket to get the change out. He pays the clerk. They have several cameras in position there, and the clerk was not paying much attention to him. The defense attorney, O'Mara, tried to draw out that did Tranyvon Martin look suspicious to him. The clerk said no. So that was very important for the prosecution's case of how he was presented there. And then the next witness they call is a witness from the communication center there in Seminole County. Seminole County evidently handles not only calls for the county, this is their 911 or emergency call system, but also for the city of Stanford and several other cities. Nonetheless, they have 2 divisions of calls, One is a non-emergency line where you call to report a crime that perhaps has occurred or something in the past, a non-life-threatening crime such as a suspicion. And that was where Zimmerman had called, and they, of course,